When you know that you are queer, but your favorite drink is beer, that's gayish. You can bottom without stopping, but you can't stand going shopping, that's gayish. Oh, gayish, you're probably gayish. Well, life's just too short for narrow stereotypes, so it's gayish. We're also gayish. It's Gayish with Mike and Kyle.
Hello, everyone in the podcast universe. This is Gayish.
The podcast so thirsty even Bear Grylls can't save it.
I bet Dan would drink his pee.
I mean, I wouldn't kick his pee out of my mouth.
I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz.
And we're here to bridge the gap between sexuality and actuality. And today, we're going to talk about the totally comfortable, everything's fine subject of AIDS.
Yeah, I'm glad we're doing it. This was requested by Patreon member Steve Hartman, so I think we just needed a push to finally cover this important, terrifying topic.
Yeah, but the pressure is on, right? Like he told us the story. I don't know why I laughed. It's nervous laughter. Told us the story about losing his boyfriend to AIDS back in the day in his 20s, and
which we should ask to see if we're allowed to say.
Yeah. I get the impression he's going to be okay with that.
He's a boisterous fellow, but we should still check. But first.
News? Is it news time?
Yeah, that thing we do every time at this point. Yeah,
well,
I think it's time for that.
I keep wanting there to be like at least an opportunity for something before news. It always just feels so abrupt.
All right. That's what you say every time.
Shh. It's fine. Okay, the news. News the first.
Yeah.
Broward County Sheriff's Office Deputy Shannon Bennett was 39.
What's Broward County? Where's that?
Florida. He was 39 when he died on April 3rd, just a week after testing positive for COVID-19. He had left work on March 23rd feeling unwell, went to the hospital the following day, was tested for coronavirus. He was a proudly out gay man who was due to marry his fiancée, Jonathan Frey, later this year. And he is believed to be the first such line-of-duty death from COVID-19 in the state of Florida. However, his police chief, Dale Engel, commented that Bennett contracted the virus because he was a, quote, homosexual who attended homosexual sexual events.
Okay. I mean, I have like linguistic problems, sociological problems.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just like,
yeah, I mean, I've seen the things that are like, it's the gays that cause corona, and then that person will get COVID. Like, yeah,
it's a roller coaster for me because on the one hand, you think, okay, Florida, this is going to be bad.
Yep. And
then it is bad.
Yep.
But then part of me, like a little tiny part of my brain is like, okay, but what if this dude, like gay or not, wasn't listening to social distancing and was going to full on orgies? Like, that's not totally like inconceivable, right? And like, what if he got coronavirus from going to orgies?
But if people get corona from going to church, they're not going to place the same level of stigma on churchgoers. This is a distinctly homosexual thing that people are going to be like, see, your lifestyle's terrible. No one's going to be like, the church lifestyle, Christianity is terrible because Christians all got together, which some of them are doing.
I disagree. I think that the liberal lamestream media will definitely make fun of people for going to church on Easter Sunday.
I will fight you on this. They will make fun of them. They will have news stories about it, but they will not say that the Christian lifestyle is evil and caused this, which is what homosexual people get. I don't know why I'm saying homosexual. That's the clinical, like gay people. They're not going to say Christian people caused it, and they should change that lifestyle.
Yeah. Well. Yeah,
because
but the rest of the roller coaster is that whether he got it from going to orgies or not, it's not relevant.
Also, no, it is. Wait, but you just made that assumption. Like that's a very like assuming that a gay person got it because he went to an orgy. Like that's kind of fucked up.
I didn't. I don't. Okay.
Where did you get that? Where did you get that from about he got it from an orgy?
I tried because of what this dude said. A homosexual who attended homosexual sexual events. Like events is the word there that makes me think like
I would not rely on this dude for accurate information about
yeah, that's true.
Gay people, or I think you're making the leap that straight people sometimes do of, oh, a gay person got it, they must have been doing weird sex to each other, and so it's their fault.
Their fault's a strong word. I know a lot of gay people, they do a lot of weird sex stuff to each other, and they should be staying the fuck at home right now.
Sure.
Anyway, so a complaint was made for obvious reasons, and as of April 11th, Police Chief Dale Engel was placed on administrative leave pending further review of allegations brought forward by the Fraternal Order of Police. So
the FOP?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Let's see. Somebody said, quote, "For any reference to be made to the tragic passing of one of our brothers at the Broward Sheriff's Office is, if true, is absolutely not only unacceptable, but is just shameful. And it's not indicative of the professionals of the town of Davie that we know." Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I obviously don't like that story because a dude is dead, but I think it's interesting that, like, a gay cop, like, cop is not a thing that you immediately think gay, and then, like, he is actually
without an Indian, a leather boy, and a
exactly
like cowboy next to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
Yeah.
Boy, all of the stories today are downers. I'm sorry.
Do you mean it's a regular week?
Regular week.
Are they all Corona stories?
No.
Ooh,
no.
Okay, that's exciting. Yay! I'm excited about a different kind of downer.
Yeah. But this is another one that involves cops. Are you ready?
Great. Sure.
The Dawson County Sheriff's Office, that's Dawson County, Georgia.
Okay.
Have been accused of, quote, cataclysmic failure by LGBT plus activists after cops arrested 9 men following a 3-day sting operation they conducted through Grindr. So
what did they arrest them for?
Largely on drug and prostitution charges. So Sergeant Derek Johnson created a profile on Grindr with the username Charlie eyeballs emoji looking for 420, and then initiated a conversation with one of these guys and offered to host at the Dawsonville Quality Inn and Suites.
Sure.
And then when one of these hookups mentioned that he had marijuana, Johnson asked, quote, "You share?" ? And offered to provide rolling papers. The sergeant messaged, "I want to get high and fuck." And the suspect replied, "Nothing wrong with that," but has been leveled charges of misdemeanor pandering, possession of marijuana less than 1 ounce, and criminal attempt.
And then J-Lo showed up because this is entrapment.
Yeah.
Was she in that movie?
I don't know.
Okay. Insert whatever the actress was in that if it's not J-Lo.
The roommate and I got in a giant fight the other night because I said she's overrated. Okay.
Oh, she definitely is.
If not overall, as an actress for sure.
Yeah. Actress. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, back to these assholes.
Sure.
The thing about this story that sticks out to me is it is just it strikes at the super heart of fear that I have about doing anything online. Right? Like the idea that a law enforcement officer is on there. It's entrapment. It's fucking entrapment, but that doesn't mean it isn't scary as fuck. And it doesn't matter if it's a cop trying to set you up for something or if it's a bunch of straight guys that want to beat up a fag. Like, just the idea that people are on there trying to reel in people to do bad shit to them is so fucking horrible. It hurts me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Although I feel like you do a little bit more online than I would, at least like with video. Like I don't share many pictures. I don't share videos, which I think you do more of that.
Videos?
Yeah, like camming. You cam.
I am a cammer.
You cam, bro.
Oh God.
That would make me really nervous. Like, that's why I don't take dick pics. Just like the idea of that just being on the internet, it's just like none of that's secure.
Yeah. It's also just a dick.
But it's mine. And that's what makes it special.
This is my dick. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Your dick is like your fingerprint for your dick.
Great. Book 'em, Dano. Gregory Nevins, an attorney with the LGBT advocacy group Lambda Legal, said, quote, "It does strike you as, wow, these are the priorities of a different era that just missed out on the last 20 years. What's going on in Dawson County is against the grain. Where does the protect and serve baseline actually come into this? Where is any appreciation for not over-incarcerating people who aren't doing anything harmful and looking out for situations where real harm is going on? It's a cataclysmic failure."
I don't want to wait for our lives to be over. I want to know right now.
God.
The fact that we're still prosecuting any kind of like low-level drug crime or weed crime is preposterous.
Much less. Okay. So any bets about, we should start this rumor maybe, that it was actually just an excuse for a bunch of closeted cops to go on Grindr? Like, hey, Lieutenant, we have this awesome idea. We're going to totally catch a bunch of bad guys. No, it's not because I want to be on Grindr. It's not because I am interested in hitting on dudes. That's preposterous. I'm looking for hard criminals.
Yeah,
here, not just hard dick.
Rock hard criminals that need the paddle of the law to slap down on their ass.
Oh God,
that sucks.
Yep. News the last. So trying to be a little bit better about gay history and knowing gay history things, we actually lost a gay history pioneer, not to coronavirus, but just to being fucking old, a couple of days ago. Pioneering LGBT plus activist, civil rights hero, and face of the same-sex marriage movement, Phyllis Lyon has died at the age of 95. She actually has a tie to Seattle here. She lived here and was active in gay stuff back in the day, but lived in San Francisco at the end of her life here. She passed away on Thursday. She and her wife, Del Martin, were activists and mentors long before there was such a thing as an LGBT plus community. Quote, "Before cell phones, they always had their phone number listed in the phone book in case any young or terrified LGBT plus person needed help or support, and they fielded dozens of calls over the years." California's Governor Gavin Newsom granted the couple San Francisco's first same-sex marriage license in 2004, back when he was just mayor. And he remembers Lyon as, quote, "a dear friend. Phyllis and Del were the manifestation of love and devotion," he tweeted. Yet for over 50 years, they were denied the right to say two extraordinary words, "I do." They were married in 2004. The courts voided their marriage, declared it fake.
Void?
No, void? Yeah, voided.
Fake?
But they went on to become the face of equal marriage in the United States, and in 2008 were one of the first same-sex couples to marry when it became legal in California. They met when Lyon was working as a journalist in Seattle, and they were one of the lesbian couples who co-founded the first lesbian organization in the U.S., Daughters of Bilitis, in 1955. She's being remembered as a giant and pioneer who changed the world for queer people. And then lots of people said lots of really nice things about her. Her wife passed away in 2008 after they married for the second time at the age of 87.
Oh, married at the age of 87.
But yeah, anyway, thanks for all your help, sister.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the news.
Do you want to get into AIDS now?
Sure. Yeah. Let's go from dead lesbians to AIDS. What do you say?
I think this is going to be a weird episode. This is the most anxiety I've had about an episode in a while. Just because it's such a huge monumental topic that I basically know there's no way for us to get totally right. So it's just like, we got to take our best swing at it. And I'm grateful for Steve for requesting this topic, because it gave us a push. I feel like I've personally been kind of like avoiding this because I know how important it is and how I don't want to fuck it up. So at least I'm glad he gave me the push to learn more, and hopefully we'll at least have some insight for people.
It's interesting to me. I think when I think back at the timeline, you are of an age, I think, that could conceivably not even know about what happened, right?
Yeah. It was definitely the generation. I was just thinking about this. The first time I had sex was in 2000 with a, well, I never had sex with a woman, so it has to be with a dude, was in 2005. So had I been alive 20 or maybe even 10 years earlier, that would have been a very different experience than it was for me. So I feel very fortunate and then also guilty that, I was kind of past the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and for me, I wasn't sexually active, but this whole pandemic, the HIV AIDS pandemic, really had a major impact on me as a kid. Like I was born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s, and it really, it's hard to overstate, I think, the impact that it had on even cis straight people in terms of fear, and it was a way to spread hate. Even it definitely set back the gay rights movement by decades. Anyway, it's interesting to me, as removed as you are from it. A lot of my friends are even younger than you and really just have no idea, like zero idea. And that's probably good and bad for different reasons, right? And I'm sure that we'll get into some of all of that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Why don't you talk about your history stuff? Sure.
Yeah, history stuff. Well, I'm not going to go back too far. I think that Dan is going to talk about some stuff before 1981 in the Patreon segment, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. So it was first clinically reported on June the 5th, 1981, with 5 cases in the United States in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. And so I think that we've talked some about it, so I'll sort of go quickly through this part. But at first, didn't know how to talk about it. Didn't really even have a name. For a while there, it was called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, before they realized later that, it's not just gay people that get it or have it. And it was renamed AIDS, which stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome.
And before GRID, it was, people would call it gay cancer.
Yeah, or in parallel to it being called GRID, it was called gay cancer. And that's because let's talk about AIDS. So HIV is the virus that leads to AIDS. And there's actually a pretty specific route that it takes, HIV takes. And it's only right to call it AIDS when it reaches a certain threshold. That threshold is in terms of T cell load. So it actually, AIDS is a HIV infection with a T cell count below 200, or the occurrence of specific diseases associated with HIV infection. So it lowers your immune system and makes you much more susceptible to a whole bunch of other kinds of disease. And people do die of AIDS itself, but typically people pass away of AIDS-related complications, which is a phrase that you may have heard in, especially like the newspaper likes to use that phrase, I think, when people pass away. But opportunistic infections then can take hold. So the most common initial conditions that alert to the presence of AIDS are pneumocystis pneumonia, cachexia. I don't know if that's how you say that or not. But cachexia is muscle loss and weight loss that is not, you can't fix it by just feeding them more. HIV wasting syndrome is another thing that gets called. Esophageal candidiasis, which candida is a...
It's a yeast.
I don't want to...
It's a yeast.
Yes. It's a yeast infection. That's like the fancy word for yeast infection, but it's in the throat is usually where it happens. And a lot of people get it after chemotherapy, because chemotherapy similarly destroys your immune system. So then people with AIDS have an increased risk of developing various viral-induced cancers. That includes Kaposi's sarcoma, which is it forms masses in the skin, lymph nodes, or other organs, and it creates a... If you've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it before. You would recognize it if you saw it, but there's a purple color associated with the skin in Kaposi's sarcoma.
It looks like purple splotches all over your skin.
Yep. Burkitt's lymphoma, which is a cancer of the lymphatic system. There's a primary central nervous system lymphoma, which is brain tumor, more or less, and cervical cancer in women that people with cervixes. But Kaposi's sarcoma, the purpley blotchy one, is the most common and is sort of become the way to visually depict people in late stage AIDS in like fiction, the media, movies, that kind of stuff. So one thing I didn't know until I started reading all of this is that in my head, when you got HIV and begin the process of seroconversion, which isn't immediately, I thought it was asymptomatic. I thought it was just like, oh, you have the virus and you don't know until bam, way later you've got, severe complications and AIDS. And that's not true. So early on, there is a flu-like symptoms that can occur like 2 to 4 weeks after exposure. It's not what I had in my head of like months or years between exposure and having symptoms. So a lot of people develop an influenza-like illness or a mononucleosis-like illness 2 to 4 weeks after exposure. Symptoms occur in 40 to 90% of cases, and most commonly include fever, large tender lymph nodes, throat inflammation, a rash, headache, tiredness, and or sores of the mouth and genitals. The rash, which occurs in 20 to 50% of cases, appears on the trunk and is maculopapular.
Wait, you have to explain that. You can't just say maculopapular.
Yeah, maculopapular. It's flat red areas on the skin with bumpy dots. Some people also develop opportunistic infections at this stage, and vomiting or diarrhea may occur. There may be neurological symptoms. What is interesting is a lot of people don't get diagnosed because a lot of these symptoms are found in a lot of other diseases, and they also can go away after an acute portion. So people just sort of assume, all right.
Yeah, it feels like the flu, and then you get better.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people, who could benefit from early treatment miss out on that because that constellation of symptoms doesn't always immediately make somebody think HIV, including doctors.
Yeah.
And then there is a latent stage, and it can last from about 3 years to over 20 years. And there are few or no symptoms at first, but near the end of the stage, people get fever, weight loss, gastrointestinal problems, and muscle pain. But like a lot of other diseases, syphilis comes to mind. There is a long period of time when you just are carrying it and like no real symptoms. And it's just kind of laying in wait inside your body, which that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm feeling bad about this episode now.
Wait, why?
Because that was just a bunch of like information. I don't know. Do people, starting with the information, I think is important. I think it's important that we have a foundation there. And I also think that it's a way to get people like tuned out. Like did people already stop listening to this episode because like they don't understand that we're talking about real humans and real suffering and that it's awful. And
that was a very clinical description of it, which the downside is like it is so much more than the how it manifests and what it looks like and the like long named diseases that you could actually die from. So
I don't know what's going on, Kyle. I don't know what's happening. I'm having an emotional experience I don't understand right now. Is this panic? Am I having a panic attack? I'm not having a panic attack.
Are you feeling anxiety?
Yeah, I'm having anxiety. I don't I have like my experienced history, and I have we're going to talk about my Uncle Tommy later. I have a great uncle that passed away of AIDS in 1990. And I have a hard time, like, I don't know what it was like to be a member of the community beyond like the few movies that I've seen. And I feel ill-equipped to sort of talk about that.
I think we need to.
Yeah, it's
like,
just the whole thing's.
That's it. Like that's what it is. It's what it was like being in the community at the time. Like that's when we talk about people don't understand it. That's exactly what they don't understand.
I don't think I understand it. Like a whole generation of gay men are dead. Like they were basically wiped out. They're gone. Like there are survivors, but like there is an entire section of a generation of gay men that just are like gone. And
yeah.
Let
me look up just some numbers, and then maybe I can give like what I listened to and watched and kind of give my like summary of what I learned.
Okay.
Yeah. So I watched and listened to a ton of things about AIDS. So I watched We Were Here and B5 and The Band Played On. Those were all they were documentaries, and The Band Played On like also had like some fictionalized depiction of it. There's like a fuck ton of people in that movie, like Sir Ian McKellen.
Yeah, I've seen two of those. What's B5? I'm unfamiliar.
It is about the like section, the ward in a hospital that was dedicated to AIDS patients because other people wouldn't take care of them.
Yeah.
And then I listened to, so I really liked We Were Here and B5. Both of those were documentaries that were really well done and showed, you know, the very personal effects of it and people who are gay and what they experienced during that time. So I would highly recommend that.
Quick correction. The movie is 5B, not B5.
Oh, are you very sure?
I'm looking at their website right now.
Okay, cool. Anyway, I don't want to go too far in comparing Corona with AIDS because AIDS was specifically targeting, it could affect other people, but the gay community was particularly hit. And near the beginning, around when it was being called like GRID, it was also being called the 4 H's, homosexual, heroin, the other H, and the 4th H. You know.
We're doing so good.
Homosexuals, hemophiliacs, heroin addicts, and Haitians.
Haitians, that's right, because that was one of the times when they learned that it was not just gay people, is when they saw that some Haitian immigrants had gotten it. So
the 4 H's. I hated that.
I mean, it did show that it was beyond like just homosexual people, but at the same time, it was all these groups of people that are already disenfranchised, and everyone was like, doesn't matter. So even though they're very different, I think it's interesting thinking about AIDS with this new knowledge I have of what it's like when the world responds to a global pandemic. So there are at least some parallels that you can draw. So you mentioned, the first case in 1981. Well, like at that time, it was gay, like people saw things that said gay cancer, that there's a gay cancer that is killing people and no one knows why. So you're gay, you have no idea why, but people start getting infected and dying. And let's see, in 1981, there were 122 deaths. In 80, that was these are adults. In 82, there were 453. In 83, there were 1,481. In 84, there were 3,074, and it just goes up and up and up until, let's see, in 1995, there were over 50,000 deaths in the U.S. This is all U.S. numbers. So it is just growing astronomically year after year, and the Reagan never talked about it until 1985. So I'm like, when I'm thinking about our response to Corona, yes, I'm upset that it took 3 months or whatever the real number, 5 months, something like that, to actually admit that it's real, that it's not fake, that it is actually affecting people. But I can't imagine going 4 years without anyone acknowledging that it's a thing, watching your friends around you die and not having anyone say like, yeah, like we know it and we're going to look into it and we're going to figure it out. The documentary 5B showed like how people on the front lines were helping and trying to educate people on like, you can touch them. Like that's like, it is not, we know now that it doesn't transmit that way, but people wouldn't touch them. There are people that were risking their lives trying to just, it's not about curing them from it, it's trying to make their death easier. And the people that they interviewed in some of these documentaries were like, I would go to 3 funerals a week. And I was just, as I was watching all these things, just thinking about like, what would I do if 90% of my friends died? Like, it's unfathomable. Like I can't, that plus the terror of not knowing why it's happening and not knowing how it's spreading, and people not accepting it or recognizing it at a federal level. Like it's just this impossible combination of things that I am really glad I watched and listened to a lot of the stuff so I can get an understanding as much as I can. But yeah, I almost feel guilty that I kind of skipped over that and didn't have to deal with that.
It's just to personalize it a little bit. I was in high school, so it's pretty late, like 92, 93, 94, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly, but we had a school assembly, and I remember this woman coming and speaking to the whole school about being HIV positive and what her experiences had been like. And I remember afterwards, and you have to remember, I went to a very small high school. We're talking like 300 people or less. It's very intimate setting by some standards. And there was a line forming of people to hug her at the end. And I remember panic about making the right decision. Like there's very much this, like, even then, this stigma about don't touch her. Why risk it? Yeah. And you could see it on the faces of the kids walking out of the auditorium. Like, am I going to stand in that line? Should I feel pressured to, like, it was, that's what the stigma of this disease did, like, culturally.
Yeah.
And then similarly, I remember, this was earlier than that. This was like in the 80s, because it was junior high for sure. Talking about, like, if you ran into somebody bleeding on the street, would you even help them? And because you, like, even to be a good person meant that you were going to get HIV. Yeah. Like those are the kinds of debates that we were having in class with each other. Like it was so pervasive. The fear was so pervasive and real and traumatizing. And I still think about some of those things even now. Yeah. Despite the fact that we have a handle on HIV in terms of, like, we have information, we know how it's transmitted, we know how it's not transmitted, we know, like, I still have thoughts and impulses and anxieties about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And at that point, like, we knew enough to know, like, basically what you were just experiencing was misinformation. Like, we knew by that time the way it's being transmitted, and at first it's understandable. I think that I was really interested. I didn't know about this before I watched all these things about the bathhouses. The bathhouses were a big debate even within the gay community of, well, we don't know how it's spreading. We think it could be sexually. Should we close down the bathhouses? Gay people understandably thought that they were being unfairly targeted. Which they were. I mean, they did end up being unfairly targeted because of this, but it's during that, like, kind of initial phase where you're, like, not sure what's happening or what's causing it. And it might be this, so maybe we should. So I understand some of those misconceptions up front, but by the 90s, like, we had it figured out more than that. So, like, yeah, those are some of the just pervasive misconceptions that are probably still around today.
Yep.
Did we talk about specifically, like, how it's transmitted?
No, I'm happy to go over that. It's transmitted several ways. So there is a sexual contact that is the one that most people are familiar with. Then there's also through blood transfusion.
Well, go back to sexual contact. That's specific. That's not saliva. That is specifically exchanging fluids like semen or vaginal fluids.
Yeah, correct. You are correct, Kyle.
Yes, I know. No, that's just important because saliva is bodily fluid, and it's an important distinction that does not transmit HIV.
Yep. There is no risk of acquiring HIV if exposed to feces, nasal secretions, saliva, sputum, sweat, tears, urine, or vomit, unless these are contaminated with blood.
I'm sorry, sputum?
That's loogies, lung butter.
Lung butter is the worst thing I've ever heard.
Mucus coughed up from the lower airways.
Okay. Yeah, you can loogie and poop on me all you want.
Only certain body fluids, blood, semen, preseminal fluid, rectal fluid, vaginal fluid, and breast milk from a person who has HIV can transmit HIV. And the fluids must come in contact with a mucous membrane or damaged tissue or be directly injected into the bloodstream from a needle or syringe for transmission to occur. Mucous membranes are found inside the rectum, vagina, penis, and mouth. I suppose nose blasting could also maybe like lead to...
Depends on how hard you do it.
Yeah. The second most frequent mode of HIV transmission is via blood and blood products. So it can be through needle sharing during intravenous drug use, needle stick injury, transfusion of contaminated blood or blood product, medical injections with unsterilized equipment, and also then mother to child. HIV can be transmitted from mother to child during pregnancy, during delivery, or through breast milk, resulting in the baby also contracting HIV. There's an interesting thing that I didn't realize, that when you test for HIV, you either look at antibody tests or you look at RNA tests. And it turns out that antibody tests are invalid for anybody who is under 18 months old. You have to do the RNA test in order to get an accurate reading of a person's serostatus. And there are wide swaths of Africa that don't have access to those RNA tests, and they suffer from a lack of like good diagnostics in general, but in particular when it comes to infants.
Yeah, you've said serostatus a couple times. Can you define that for everyone?
Sure. Seroconversion is when a specific antibody develops and becomes detectable in the blood. So when you have a viral infection, your body starts to produce antibodies in response, and when you have seroconverted is when HIV specific, well, when we're talking about HIV seroconversion, that's when HIV antibodies rise to the level that you could detect them in somebody's blood.
So they are now HIV positive.
They are now HIV positive. Well, yeah. Right. I mean, there is the whole like undetectable is untransmittable thing. So I don't think you can't unseroconvert. Like, even if you get your viral load down below a level where it's even detectable anymore, that doesn't mean you're HIV negative.
Right.
So it's important to sort of decouple the HIV positive and negative status from seroconversion, but you're largely right.
Yeah. I was just trying to boil it down to like a simple way to kind of make sure.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I'll tell you a couple other things that I learned while watching these documentaries that I thought was really interesting. One is that in We Were Here, it talked about how the lesbian community, even though they hadn't always been included by gay people, stepped up and, for example, donated blood, or they would work at the hospitals. So I thought that was a really, even though it was specifically predominantly attacking gay men, the fact that, lesbians stepped up and were like, we're family and we need to help each other out. And that's part of where I think when people they're like, why are all these different letters together? Well, when you look back at the history, there are times like this when lesbians stepped up to help gay men, when trans people were the ones to, be the first to fight for gay rights. everyone
started Stonewall.
yeah. So like these groups have worked together for so long and it's so important. So I feel like if people don't see the connection, it's almost they're lucky they don't have to think about anyone but their own group.
Yeah.
Why am I going off on this thing? Another thing that really stood out, and especially the connection between AIDS and Corona. I'm going to play a video from 5B.
The hysteria, the fear-mongering, and how, some people politicized it and all those things that if we don't remember that will happen again.
Could you hear that?
Sort of.
He said, with all the fear-mongering and politicizing of AIDS, if we don't remember, it will happen again.
Yeah.
And it did. Again, like not identical, much quicker response when it affects everyone, not just gay people and heroin addicts. But there are some of those parallels that starting to draw. And then a lot of people marked when Rock Hudson was diagnosed as one of the turning points for like basically non-gay people being like, oh yeah, this is a thing that could affect me too. And like, so it's shitty. People need it to like enter into their own personal world, like a friend or themselves or a celebrity, like before they actually care.
I forget. Did we know that Rock Hudson was gay before we knew that he had HIV?
I don't know.
Like I remember when Freddie Mercury died, which was later, I think that was in the early 90s. And that was sort of a, like, he came out as queer the day before. No, he came out about his status. He said that he had AIDS the day before he died. And I think that there were, I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I guess the association that I'm making is like a lot of people in my family found out that Uncle Tommy was gay at the same time they found out that he was dying of AIDS. That those steps were, I think, for a lot of people made at the same time.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Rock Hudson. So you take a celebrity, and now suddenly people fucking care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And to go back to your point just now, that people were just starting to become open about like being gay, which is like the excitement of being in San Francisco and Castro, but people still weren't either. They weren't out to their family, or they were out and got kicked out. So they didn't have their blood family. So they had to form these groups of their gay friends. And there was one moment where one of the nurses in the documentary said she overheard the dad of someone who was infected with AIDS say, it's harder for me to hear that he's a fag than that he has AIDS, which is like, So people had to tell them both two ridiculous monumental life things. And then hopefully their family even cared or showed up or, were willing to go see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's no amount of us talking about, this is part of my fear of like, there's no amount of us talking about it that can like really understand what it's like to be there. So that's why I really recommend the documentaries. And Steve Hartman sent those over for us to watch. So thank you, Steve, for suggesting a lot of those.
Yeah.
Can I tell you about AIDS Today?
Yeah, please do.
I think a lot of people assume that until you cleared it up for them, so they don't anymore, but assume that, it's not AIDS anymore, it's HIV. So you pointed out you get infected with HIV, but at a certain point you could get to the third stage is AIDS. So AIDS is still a thing. People still die of it, or like you said, AIDS related complications. So I looked at data. I wanted to kind of give the little bit more current numbers on what's going on with AIDS. This data is from UN AIDS, and the peak in AIDS-related deaths worldwide was in 2004.
Oh, wow.
So, later than you may expect. 1.7 million people died worldwide. In 2010, there were 1.2 million people that died worldwide. In 2018, which are the latest numbers I could find, 770,000 people died of AIDS-related causes.
Wow.
So it's still this massive pandemic that's killing a lot of people. In the U.S. in 2000,
and let me guess, it's in poorer parts of the world.
Yep. Access to medicine is one of the big contributors to not knowing your status or passing it along. Mm-hmm. In 2018, in the U.S., there were 17,000 people that got a AIDS diagnosis. They reached stage 3 of HIV.
Wow.
So it's something that people are still diagnosed of and still dying of. There are just total, since it started worldwide, there have been 35 million people that have died of AIDS-related illnesses.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot. Like, I don't think the human brain can, like, even fully comprehend just the magnitude of that, right?
Yeah. And I think that's like, it's hard to talk like the numbers, like it's really so hard to understand that, when you're talking about like, it's important to understand where it comes from and why, and like your section on the biology or like the kind of the medical side, but like those are each just these like individual things that are like, there are people that are dying and they have no idea why.
Yeah.
And it's, you talked a little bit about like how it's affected you. And like, even though I didn't grow up with it as much as you did, I still, every time I have sex, I like, basically I'm like, I think I have AIDS. I know that's ridiculous and not what is how it actually happens or anything, but I still am like, oh, I think I have it now.
Yeah.
And I feel guilty that I've like done a lot of reckless shit. So I feel really guilty that I have not gotten HIV. Because other people
feel guilty that you haven't. That's interesting.
Well, it's like, why I've done so many reckless things. Other people had sex with one person and got it, or got stuck with a needle and got it. Like, I don't deserve to have to come away without it. Like, I didn't.
Well, and not to fuel that fire, but there are people that have unprotected sex one time and end up with it.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's a roll of the dice, right?
Yeah.
And you're lucky, like in a fairly literal way.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's heavy. So, okay, like the couple of times that we have talked about it, when you're like, you have said to me, I think I have HIV. Like, you're not kidding.
No.
Not that I thought that you were kidding, but I did think that maybe you knew that you were being crazy.
When I know I'm being crazy when I say I think I have AIDS. Like, I recognize is not a thing. There's still like, that's not even though it's, I know not a thing, it's still like, I still have that in the back of my head as a fear, an irrational fear. But yeah, there are times where I have looked up like, oh, you have flu-like symptoms, and I'll feel my lymph nodes to see if they feel, and I'll be like, oh yeah, they do feel a little bit bigger. Like, I have this thing on my tongue that's a sore. And so like, there have been times where I also don't know if I'm a hypochondriac. I think I might be.
That's what a hypochondriac would say.
I tell people I worry that I might be a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there have been times I was like, fuck, I have HIV. And I was trying to like figure out how to deal with that. And it's just me being just making assumptions and, WebMDing symptoms and,
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely still has instilled fear in me. Partly rightfully so. Like, there's part of it that is good. There's like a good, fear is a weird word, but like, we need to know what it is and what's causing it. And you should, it's a scary thing. You should be afraid of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's
and part of the fear, I think, for like the generation older than me, is that because we have better treatments, because we have PrEP, that we're going to forget how dangerous it is. Like, the tiger is caged, but it's still a tiger, and that if we turn our back, it's gonna rear its head again, or that people are going to be reckless and make dumb decisions, and that all of that caution and activism and education is going to be lost because of the strides that we've made. But that the next thing will come along, the next HIV will come along, and we'll be ill prepared, ill equipped to handle it because we've forgotten all of these lessons.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that if this came around again, we would be much better at dealing with it, which is a scary thought.
God, what a downer. Okay.
And so maybe we could just set up, like you've already mentioned, like your family has a very personal connection to AIDS.
Yeah. My family has a very personal connection to AIDS, and I thought maybe we could real quick call my mom and have her mom-splain that whole thing. Yeah, that whole experience.
This feels weird. Do I play the theme music? That feels like a very weird, overly happy way to introduce this.
I think we should, because I want to hear it, and then don't play the plucky music behind it.
Okay. We just need a little bit of lightness, a little bit of Mike singing.
Yeah, should we call my mom?
Yeah, let's call your mom.
We've got questions, she's got answers. It's time for Momsplaining with Ma Johnson.
Hi, fucking Dan.
Hi, Mom. How are you?
Kyle's big. Oh, there, you're bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. You got big when he talks. Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
That's what happens to me, too. Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
You kept your mustache.
Well, just for now. I think I'm going to cut this son of a bitch off real soon. Well, Mom.
Yes, honey.
The reason we're calling today is because we were talking about AIDS on the episode today, and how that we have a family connection or a family story, and I wanted you to mom-splain some things.
Okay.
Okay.
Theme music. Let's go.
Great. Yeah. So we've talked about it a couple of times before on the show, but your uncle, so your mom's brother, Tommy, he and his partner passed away of AIDS in 1990.
Axel was there, so 91, as I recall. Grandpa, everyone, or the parents both had passed before he did, so he didn't have to. I don't think that they knew. I don't think he ever came out, or that they, any of that conversation was ever had or understood. So
he didn't come out to his parents?
No. Well, and when he came out, actually, to my parents, his sisters, he came out and told them he had AIDS about the same time. So, I mean, it was like double whammy, but never skipped a beat. My dad called Tommy's partner his sweetie. Tommy and his sweetie are coming to the party, kind of whatever.
And is that Uncle Bob?
Mr.
Yeah.
Bob.
Mr. Bob.
Bob.
Mr.
And
Bob.
Aunt Tommy. No, I'm kidding.
Do you remember, we were talking earlier about kind of the stigma around people that had AIDS of like, how do I get it? Can I be infected? Do you remember if you were worried about that? And if
did
so,
I
what
ever
you did?
worry about it?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, I think in your mind at first you go, oh my, we could touch their soap and get, I mean, who knows, that kind of crap goes through. But his AIDS manifested as a sore on his leg. He had like lesions and spots. Well, in time, Tommy had that as well. But initially, he could still work because the lady he worked for was a really good friend of ours, and she was totally, understood the whole stigma and the whole horribleness of how people were being treated. Mr. Bob died from a lung disease, and I think it has a name. Why don't you look that up, little fucking Dan? Well, the way it happened in him, or what actually, why he passed, was from a lung thing, like his lungs checked out or, whatever. But I remember how horribly devastated he was because he couldn't play music. He couldn't go out in public. He wore makeup on the lesions, like on his arms or wherever that would be, because everybody was looking for those suckers, and they could not in any way outwardly be gay because they would get the shit kicked out of them, I would think.
Yeah, I'm going to be fucking ridiculous, and I recognize that. And the world premiere, the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, I watched with Uncle Tommy and Mr. Bob. And so I know that they were at our house in Zilla on that date in 1987.
Well, they came more than once.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering is, like, he was flying back to DC for treatment. I have a vague memory that was for AZT, which was just like the government was experimenting with that, and he went to the VA because he was a veteran. But I don't remember if it was that early or not. I guess, like, did he have AIDS? And we knew that in 1987 because he wouldn't pass away for another 4 years after that.
I don't think he had it then, did he? I don't think he had AIDS at first when they came and stayed with us. I think it was there was maybe only like a year or ish.
So from your memory, from like I have AIDS to I'm now dead was like a very short amount of time.
Yeah. Reasonably short. Yeah. With, I would say a year.
Okay.
Yeah. So once it was obvious, or once he was sick, a year and a half at the most, I would say.
Yeah.
It moved pretty quickly. And then Bob passed probably, I don't know, a month or so later.
I was curious about, like, the first time where you were there in person with him and saw the lesions. To me, that for some reason feels like this is now a very tangible thing that you can see and touch right in front of you. I'm curious what that felt like for you.
It was very sad, very emotional, very, you don't want to see anybody that you live to be sick or, but that was, as I said a bit ago about everybody was watching, looking for those signs that someone was infected, or is that a proper term?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I looked, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awful. I feel so bad. Hug, kiss, whatever. I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't afraid of him, and I wasn't afraid of, after I knew, like I said, I knew how, it was all over the board how it happened, and it was God killing the gays for doing the wrong hole. I don't know. There was a lot of, it was crazy. I just loved him. I mean, he was just such a great person, and I'd spent a lot of time with him. And he was not that much older than us. My mom was the oldest of 7, and he was the youngest. And I'm not sure how old he was when he passed. Michael, do you know?
He was born on May 29th of 1947 and passed away February 9th of 91. So he was 43.
Yeah. Wow.
Which, I don't know. I'm 41. 40. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I want to go back to when you found out that he had AIDS. Was at that time, did you expect him to die within the next year or so?
No.
What were your expectations when you found out?
Yeah, I just, always the edge of denial, slash, just he'll beat it. He'll be that one guy in 8 million or whatever, or that the AZT would work, or that, it was so hard for me that I wasn't even involved that much at the end, because it was just hurt too much. And so my uncle that just passed, his brother Ron, and his wife Janet were the people down in the Portland area where he passed that were there were the caregivers, and they right to the end. Here's something that I've been thinking about since Michael said that we might talk about this. Ron, his brother, said at the very end, Uncle Tommy was praying that he would be accepted into heaven and that he would not be gay. Uncle Ron told me that he was praying that he wouldn't be gay, or that he wouldn't, that he would still get into heaven. That is, I wasn't able, he was in a hospice, actually physically in a hospice. And I think I never went down there. I'd seen him and been with him so many times. And when it was pretty evident within probably weeks of him passing, I couldn't go down there. I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. So, have regrets about that somewhat. He had family around him, but that I wasn't strong enough for, however old the kids were, kind of thing, or which would have been just an excuse, because I'm sure that everyone would have understood if I'd gone down there. So anyway,
what do you think? You mentioned that it was hard to see that, to made it so you stayed away. What about it was difficult enough that it prevented you from going to be there?
Just to see him. I mean, I had talked to him on the phone, and then had gotten reports from Ron and Janet, and he was just emaciated. He was just covered. He was purple from lesions, and pain, and it wasn't even a matter of, I want to remember him, happy, healthy, wealthy, wise, and beautiful. It was just that pain that he had, and that he was going to die, was just more than I could even think about being with him. Or what could I do but cry? Which he didn't need that, right? So,
what was his disposition when you talked to him throughout this process?
He was really scared, really angry, really, hoping AZT would work. He's a really smart person, incredibly smart, incredibly talented.
What was he angry at?
That they got, it was kind of he said about how they as a couple got it. And he had said that Bob, he felt, had been to the bathhouses or whatever, because Tommy, for the most part, was, I guess, in this relationship, was monogamous. And so he sort of blamed Bob, and, it just got that kind of situation. But all together, why us? Why gay men? Why? Initially, he couldn't play music. He didn't feel good. So much rejection, so much judgment, and just cruel people. He was really scared. As you should be, as anyone would be with cancer, or as anyone would be that when you're near the end. And I'd never been around anyone that had lingered, or the what I had always experienced with my grandparents, etc., was just that they just died. Like not maybe knowing if they were sick or not, but certainly they went in and had heart failure and they were gone, or they had, So I was kind of unable to, see what that looked like, even to be with someone that would be that close, or that would be happening while you were there. It was kind of like the first person that was in the process. And you just always have your fingers crossed, and you're sending up the good mojo to the universe. But it was just really something, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
He was such a sweet man.
Mom, thank you for talking to us. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, well, I don't know if there's anything else that I can help or say or do.
How's your vagina?
My vagina. Would you like to see it? How about Miss? Close your eyes, Michael. How about Laverne or Shirley? You want to see them?
Thank you for being on. We really appreciate it.
You are very welcome. I love it. I love being able to talk to y'all. I love you.
Love you too, Mom.
Thanks for being on.
I've never talked to you sober before. I love you guys.
Love you too, Mom. Have a good day.
Yep. Bye.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up, I am not a silver linings kind of person, and I think to try to shoehorn silver linings into things is really fucked up, and it can just suck, and that's okay.
Tell us about the good part of AIDS, Kyle. Here we go.
No. In the documentaries, no one was trying to say, here are the good things about AIDS. Like, no one was intentionally saying, trying to do that, like, oh, but we got this out of it. But it was really interesting to me that some of those things just happened to come up in a very informative, like the people that were right there, the people that either had AIDS or were working with people with AIDS, talked about. For example, someone in one of the documentaries said it brought the gay community together in a way that was about more than sex. And that's just like, it's a non-sexual way people are coming together, in that it's, fighting for, it's, bringing people together for politics. It's bringing people together for social change and activation. So that's a really interesting byproduct of this, that it made there be more to being gay than sex. And it weirdly unified the community in that kind of way. Huh.
That's what we're doing with our show. You're right, Kyle. Gayish is like AIDS.
Oh, boy. Nope. Tell that to the monkeys. One of the nurses said, like, she had always been trained to, be a little bit, not cold, but like, you can't be emotionally involved in your patients.
Yeah.
Izzy Stevens on Grey's Anatomy had to learn that time and time again. And
she cut that LVAD wire, man.
She cut that LVAD wire. That's not good. Denny Duquette. Who knows what would have happened. But she said, for once, like that was in 5B, where she talked about, like, we created this thing, like, they didn't need people to remain emotionally distant and look at them, like, they needed people to hold their hand, because no one would touch them. They needed people to show them compassion and care. And it was just, for her as a nurse, that was a complete change in what she viewed as nursing until that point. So there are just some of these really interesting byproducts that that I saw. It was very, I think, inspiring to see that people that have been through that, it wasn't everything is horrible, this is terrible. They talked about a lot of heavy, hard, difficult times where they didn't know if they wanted to keep living. But also there were, every now and then, there were like some of the good memories that came out of this time, which is so insane to me that someone could go through that and have anything positive to think about or say. Yeah.
Silver linings.
No, but I hate silver linings.
I know. No, but the point you're making is just, that sometimes these kinds of things can bring people together. And
the resilience of people who were right there in the middle of it is astounding to me. Yep. I don't know how people could lose all their friends and keep going through that and not know what, I just can't, it's unfathomable to me to be one of those people and keep going.
Yeah. Well, on that heavy note, did we do it?
I mean, no, but it's impossible. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully there's some insight that you got that you didn't know before. And there's plenty more that we need to talk about for HIV specifically. And there's so much to AIDS that we could get into. So this is impossible to cover every single thing. So hopefully at least we started our conversation about AIDS. I did a ton of research about AIDS and now feel very much very much more informed.
Very much more informed.
Very much informed. So yeah, we did it as best as we could.
Well, great. Let's. You want to take a break?
Let's take a break.
Let's take a break.
This is the part where Mike and Kyle take a break.
So, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So, are we back?
We're back.
We're back.
We're going to do our Gayest and Straightest.
We're going to do our Gayest and Straightest, but first, our website is gayishpodcast.com.
Wait, Mike.
What?
Before anything.
Yeah.
I forgot to announce this on our whatever celebration one we had. We have a new teaser that I have put together, some of our best clips and guests and shit we like. And so if you want to be so kind as to send this to a friend, let them think about it, try it out. It's less than 10 minutes long. It's at bit.ly/gayish teaser. So check that out, send it to friends, and we really appreciate it. Also, we're at Gayish Podcast on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitter.
And Discord.
Well, yeah, but we're not at Gayish Podcast on Discord, but we are there.
We are on Discord, too. Our hotline, you can send us text mails, or leave us voice messages.
Yeah.
You can leave us voicemails or send us text messages. Anyway, it's 5855-GAYISH. That's 585-542-9474. Standard rates apply.
Our email is gmail@gayishpodcast.com.
And our physical mailing address is Post Office Box 19882, Seattle, Washington, 98109, which, by the way, even during the coronavirus, we're getting stuff in the mail.
What's in there? And is it for me? I want it. Give it to me.
There are 4 naked guys coloring books. One of them is for my mom. One for you, one for me, one for Dan, and one for my mom. It's an adult coloring book for adults.
Wow.
That's what it says. An adult coloring book for adults.
Give that to me in like 6 months, Mike.
Yep, for sure. I will.
Do you know who sent that?
There is an Instagram tag on here. Instagram is at RufusArt, RUFUSART.
Is that the bookmaker or the person that sent it to us?
I believe that both are the same person.
Oh,
the vague memory I have is this person was saying, I'm going to publish this thing and I'm going to send some to you.
Oh, cool.
Let's go with that's the answer.
That sounds
RufusArt.
Gayest and Straightest?
Let's do our Gayest and Straightest. Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Great. The straightest thing about me this week is that I'm playing World of Warcraft. Like
you say that so sadly.
Kind of a lot of World of Warcraft. It just seems like not only is it straight bro, it's straight bro like 2012.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am having fun though. It's a fun game. It's a great way to pass the time. And there's even a gay server. So you can go to the Proudmoore server, and that is a higher than normal LGBT population. We've sort of taken over that server, and it feels safer and nicer, and your typical internet assholes are taken care of very promptly on that server.
Nice.
And then the gayest thing about me this week, last night I joined the Pride 48 happy hour Zoom call. Fucking Dan was there for a while as well, and I ended up Big Fatty made me do a bunch of poppers. So
made you? Was this oh no? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, no, I couldn't possibly. Wait, no. And then they forced me to do it.
Yeah, like the straight guy on the casting couch. I could never. $20. Okay, dick in my mouth.
Yep. I did.
How'd you feel? How'd you like it?
I don't.
You still don't like it?
I don't. Not socially. Not like, hey, let's hang out and do poppers. I love the way that makes it feel. And I still haven't had the opportunity to use them during sex. Mm-hmm. That isn't just masturbation. Which it also doesn't do much for me in that arena either. So I don't know. Maybe it's just not my thing. Who knows?
So the gayest thing is that I don't have to put my lube away, and my headboard and like kind of my computer. Like there's just it's My life is very lube filled right now.
Just lube everywhere.
A little bit. It's just walk carefully because you know slippery when lit. My straightest thing, I'm going to actually work a little bit of Gayda into this, which is new for me. I saw this study. It's the straightest part is like, what about straight people? Homophobia. There are now studies that show that homophobia actually affects straight people because straight people may be the target of homophobic bullying, even if they are not gay. So I thought that was really interesting that homophobia affects not just gay people, and hashtag all lives matter, even straight people's.
Huh. Straight people, we see you and how hard your life is.
You're valid. You're okay just the way you are, straight people. We don't fault you.
So
wait,
that's...
Nope. You were going to do a listeners.
Oh, yeah. A listener's Gayest to Straightest, which this time even like in advance have permission. How about that? Yeah. This is from our Discord server. It is Alan J, who says, Straightest, made myself nearly gag from my own farts. Gayest, screamed like a banshee when a wasp flew in my room, and I ran to get my 6'5" flatmate to catch it for me.
6'5" flatmate?
Yeah, that's the gayest thing about you.
Climb on and hide.
And while we've been talking, Dan found a thing, and listeners can get the coloring book that we had sent to us at rufus.bigcartel.com.
Thanks, Rufus.
So is that it?
That's it.
All right. A special thank you to Steve Hartman for being an amazing patron and for selecting the topic of this episode.
Yeah, and thank you also to your mom for being on, and your Uncle Tommy.
And Mr. Bob.
Well,
this has been Gayish. I'm Mike Johnson.
I'm Kyle Getz. Until next week, be butch, be fabulous, be you. See you next week. I don't want to do a Polari word of the week this time. It just seems weird and out of place.
Okay.